Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of FPL Fanzone. My name's Nick and in today's episode we are going to do a review of the FPL 2024-25 season. For me it finished a little bit less than where I wanted to on the season, but we'll go through that in more detail. We'll look at my players of the season, and I've got loads of different awards to go out to different categories. We'll also look at the FPL Fanzone winner. We'll announce that in this video. The shirt has already been sent out to the winner of the FPL Fanzone League. And then, of course, we'll look at my team. We'll look at the chips that I used and the impacts they had and some of my decisions, good and bad, throughout the season to help us make better decisions for next season. So without further ado, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's get started. So let's start off with a massive congratulations to Brandon Ralph, the winner of the FPL Fanzone League. I've got his team on the screen here in front of us. 2,604 points, finished 8,600th in the world out of 11 million players. That's outstanding. But just to put that into context, the FPL Fanzone League, we've got 3 players that finished within 3 points of each other at the top of that league. So well done to Brandon, to Sergey and to Mika, because it was really, really tight right up until that last game. And you can see there that despite really strong last weeks for Sergey and for Mika, that Brandon just pipped them at the end to win by 3 points. So yeah, a big win. Congratulations. I know I've already spoken on WhatsApp, so I have sent the shirt out to you as well. So Brandon is an Arsenal fan, so thankfully I didn't have to buy a Tottenham shirt this season. So yeah, the new shirt has been sent out to him already. So congratulations, Brandon, and I hope to have you on the channel in the coming weeks when you're back from your holiday to talk a little bit about your season and how you got such an amazing rank this year. So yeah, congratulations, Brandon. Next up, let's have a look at some of the Player of the Season awards. And these are players that for me have stood out for multiple different reasons. Some will be analytical, some will just be because I've really enjoyed having them in my team or they've got me great results. And then obviously there'll be some of the big ones, the big point scorers in that as well. So let's have a quick look at the Player of the Season awards for FPL Fanzone. First up, and let's start straight off the bat, the best player of the season by a million miles was Mo Salah. Without a doubt, 29 goals, 18 assists, 334 points. Was significantly, 100 points more than anyone else in the league, which is amazing. So congratulations, Mo Salah, best player in the league. And even though his form dropped off towards the end of the season, he was just phenomenal throughout that as well. For me, one of the most underrated and undervalued players of the season was Bryan Mbeumo. He started off the season at 7 million, finished on 236 points. He did rise. He was actually one of the highest risers in the game to 8.3 million. So made 1.3 million in price rises throughout the season. He was also the biggest overachiever, and I know we'll talk about that in a minute, but his XG was, I think 12.8, yet he got 20 goals. So he massively overperformed his stats. But yeah, in terms of his price, I'm certain that he's going to be going up in price for next year. The strongest finish has to be Jarrod Bowen. He came into my team, I think in about game week 33, 34, and just got 9 points, 10 points, 9 points. He was just getting points after points every week. His form over the last 6 weeks was 9.5, which was phenomenal and really helped my rank to rise over those last couple of weeks as I was chasing that top 500k. He finished on 193 points. Was just a phenomenal, strong finish to the season for Jarrod Bowen. So hopefully that sort of Graham Potter era is going to help him into next season. He can continue on that good form. But overall, a strong finish. Yeah, happy there. For me, the best enabler was Morgan Rogers. 5 million at the start of the season, did rise to 5.8 by the end. And while he was a little bit hit and miss, 161 points for someone in that price range was amazing. And he was just someone that just allowed me to spend money elsewhere in the team. Now, if you want also someone within that same price range, I think got 163 points was Semenyo. But I didn't have Semenyo as much. And I never felt like he was as consistent as Rodgers on that as well. So for me, the best enabler in my team and for the season was Morgan Rodgers. Next up, overachiever. Very much like Brian and Bremo, Chris Wood massively outperformed his stats this season. His expected goals for the season was 13.2, and yet he got 20 goals this season. There was many times in games where he was just not involved at all, and then he'd just pop up with a goal out of nowhere. He got 200 points this season, which no one expected from Chris Wood. A lot of people jumped on him quite late. I was lucky I got on him early enough in his run and kept him for long enough, and then miraculously dropped him at the end of the season, even though I didn't really want to, but his form dropped off after that. So for me, massive overachiever in terms of his stats, but 20 goals for a season for a striker is amazing, especially in that Nottingham Forest team who overperformed a lot throughout the season, and obviously happy that they got European spots. It's just a shame they missed out on that Champions League. Next up is the best manager. Obviously assistant managership was introduced this year, and David Moyes finished top with 137 points. He was also the manager to get the most table bonus wins with 3. So just out overall, he seemed to be one to be able to get those extra points. And I remember owning him during that first double game week in game week 24. So yeah, I think he was obviously just the standout there. For me, when it comes to the managers, the table bonus made a huge difference. I think the Fulham manager Silva also got 3 table bonus wins, but wasn't as consistent in getting points outside of that as well. So overall, best manager of the season, obviously depending on when you had them, was David Moyes. Some honourable mentions there. Slot and Pep Guardiola had the most wins overall, both with 10 wins from when the game went live with the assistant managers. So, but overall in terms of points, despite that, was still David Moyes. So next up, most valuable player in terms of best value for money. It's actually Mark Flecken. If you look at the stats, Mark Flecken averaged 30.7 points per million that he cost. There were several others in and around that price range, but he was actually the one that just pipped everyone else for that as well. So it's nice to see a goalkeeper getting one of the awards on that as well. We talked already about Brian and Bremo being the money maker. The highest price range of everyone this season, with 1.3 million from his starting price to his end price. For me, the most overhyped player this season, watched a lot of content creators and other experts around the internet, and João Pedro was often talked about, and he had some phenomenal weeks. He got multiple double-digit hauls, but he was just in and out of the team, whether it was suspensions, whether it was injuries. And it ended up on 126 points, which is more than respectable at his price range of 5.5 million. But he just felt like there was times when everyone felt like he was an absolute, couldn't go without him, but he just never really kind of found that consistency to get him to the grand heights on that as well. Next up, biggest single game week goes to Cole Palmer in game week 6. 25 points, 4 goals, 3 bonus points, the clean sheet. Just 25 points in a single game week is phenomenal. If you look at double game weeks, now bearing in mind also they got twice the amount of chance to score points. Mo Salah won the biggest double game week with 29 points, and he got a 13 and a 16 in the same game week. An honourable mention there would have been Barnes as well, who got 27 points, but again it was a double game week for them in game week 32, so he got, I think it was a 13 and a 14 points on that as well. But yeah, just interesting when you think about it, to see someone get 25 points in a single game week when the biggest double game week of the season was 29 points on that. And then the last but not least, maybe this is me just being a little bit bitter as I'm an Arsenal fan, but I just needed to remind Erling Haaland to stay humble, hey? Because he was the most overpriced player for the season. Now, bearing in mind he did still score 20 goals, but only 181 points. Yes, he had some injuries. Yes, he was a bit out of form for his usual standard. But at 15 million, it just wasn't. You could get so many more players that would get more points than him for significantly less, £7 or £8 million left. So yeah, for me, a bit. I just wanted to throw it in there because I'm a bitter Arsenal fan on that as well. Okay, so moving on to my team, we're going to have a quick look at my starting team for the start of the season, my game week 1 team. We'll have a look at how my ranks rose and fell over the course of the season and where I finished up at game week 38. We'll have a quick look at some of my chips and when I used them and how effective they were for me on that as well. And then finally, we're just going to have a look at some of the decisions that I made and things that I was happy with or things that I was unhappy with as we go through that as well. Again, if you've got this far into the video, thank you. If you've got this far into the season, thank you. Hit that like button. Leave a comment below if I missed anyone out. Who was your player of the season? Who was the standout for you? Who was the differential that helped you rise in rank, or the captain choice that you got wrong throughout that as well? Let me know in the comments below. So starting out with my game week 1 team, and like everyone else, I made 400 changes before the start of the season, but I actually started the season really well. 76 points, 608k in the world, which actually was my best point of the season. It was all downhill from there, and very rapidly not long after that. I had Flecken in goals, Saliba, Gabriel and Gvardiol, Saka, Salah, Gordon, Eze, Bailey, Solanke and Isak. And then on the bench I had Valdemars and Muniz, Harwood and Johnson. Now if I look at this team and I look back to the start of the season, I'm not actually unhappy with that as well. Gordon didn't start very well, and actually if you look towards the end of the season, you've got the likes of Jacob Murphy or Harvey Barnes that kind of really took over that role. Eze started extremely poorly, missed a few goals, had a few goals disallowed early on in the season. Bailey, if it had been Rodgers, now there was a lot of talk about Rodgers pre-season because he started scoring goals in pre-season, so there was a lot of talk about him, but I just felt that Bailey was the more exciting player. He completely disappeared for Aston Villa this season, which has not really been a part of it as well. So and then up front, Isak has been consistent, over 20 goals for the season on that as well. Solanke just never really did anything for me. He started off in a slightly deeper role, didn't really have the chances on that, and Tottenham had just been appalling all season, much to my delight, but he was not been great as well. So what would I change here? If I was looking back now, there's not a huge amount that I would have changed. That defence looks really strong. The subs bench is really weak. But if I look at where I finished the season, I had Gvardiol, I had Saka. I dropped Salah just because I was trying to chase rank towards the end. Gabriel got injured. Saliba I had in my team. He got injured towards the end of the season as well. Isak absolutely was a good choice. So it's just those sort of differentials, and they're always difficult to pick at the start of the season, right? No one would have picked Harvey Barnes or Jacob Murphy at the start of the season. Eze has found really good form towards the end of the season, but certainly the likes of Sarr were comparable to him throughout the season as well. And then we talked about Bailey as well. So was there any... I'm not really massively unhappy with that team. The big, obviously glaring mistake that I made in game week 1 was not having Erling Haaland. And that massively punished me. So not starting with Erling Haaland, not starting with the 2 best players in the league in the whole game is just a bit of a mistake, really, and certainly one I won't look at making again early next season. So that was my biggest mistake for game week 1. So I showed this in my last video, and you can see here that my game week 1 rank of 608k was actually my highest rank of the whole season. I finished in game week 38 on 743k. So for me, it's quite disappointing. I was hoping to finish top 100k at the start of the season, having to finish 75k last year. There was 11 million players. So overall, I'm well within the top 10%, which if you take the top 10% of the Premier League, that's finishing second. So if I take top 10% of the FPL league overall, is the equivalent of finishing second in a Premier League. So I'm okay with that, but realistically, I wanted a top 100k, and I didn't get there. And a lot of that was due to Erling Haaland. If you look at those first few weeks, Haaland was getting hat-tricks and bonus points. And then in game week 6, when I wildcarded, I took out Salah, who I was thought was a better option than Haaland. Switched Salah to Haaland, and obviously made some other changes as well. And then Haaland just went on a blank. Just was completely dropped all of his form as well. And then Salah decided to run away with it. And then I had to eventually waited, I think it was till like game week 13 when I brought Salah back in. So those 10 game weeks, 11 game weeks between game week 1 and game week 13, having Haaland and not having Haaland absolutely destroyed my rank. And despite climbing back up after my wildcard in game week 6, I could have been there a lot quicker if I'd have managed to just keep Haaland and Salah. And that was my biggest decision, was not to have both in my team, because if I'd have done that, the ability to drop Haaland later on when he wasn't performing would have been a lot easier. Whereas having to make that decision to switch back and take a hit to move back from Haaland to Salah, kept going, oh no, but he can do it this week, oh no, he can do it this week, and he just never sort of came back to that form as well. So yeah, it was a tough one there for me. The other interesting one was the assistant managers in game week 24. They announced it very, very late, like on the Friday before the deadline. So like giving us less than sort of a day's notice to say that there was going to be a double game week for Liverpool, which meant Liverpool then had 2 doubles back to back, and therefore using something like the assistant manager chip. So I think that called out a lot of managers, and some used their triple captain on Salah, which worked out really well. It was his biggest double game week, the 29-pointer. So that worked out okay, but that was quite an interesting point for me as well. And then towards the back end of the season, when I was looking to wildcard again, in game week 30, 31, I started to hold off on making transfers because there was obviously some blanks and doubles coming up, and I was like, oh, I won't bring in Crystal Palace players because they've got the blank coming up, and that actually hurt my rank, and you could start to see that dip again from 27 through to 31. I was kind of just trying to hold on until I could use my wild card, and then of course we saw the rise again. Use my wild card, triple captain, bench boost, and free hit all back to back. So for me, overall in the season, I felt like I used my chips wisely. They helped me rise rank as and when I used them. But I think, as I said, if we look at that first 10 weeks, that's what killed my rank, and all of that was down to my poor decision making on Haaland, Salah, or both. And I just happened to be on the wrong side of that on both occasions. So looking at my chip usage, wildcard 1, we talked about this already, was actually a red arrow when I used it as well, which to make that even worse. But I did switch out Salah, and I did bring in Haaland, and then it took me way too long to change that back. The one good thing I actually quite liked about my wildcard 1 was my goalkeeper choice. Now at the time everyone was looking at moving to Raya, because Arsenal had a nice run of fixtures moving up, and therefore that double defence felt like a good option. But there was a slight injury doubt to David Raya. And then I worked out that I could get Flecken and Pickford for less than getting Raya and a 4.0 goalkeeper. So by having 2 keepers that then went on to be quite consistent, Everton turned it around, started to get some clean sheets and the like. I felt like that was a really good choice, that I took more out of fear from Raya being injured than actual logic. But looking back on it, it felt like a really good decision in hindsight as well. My assistant manager chip was a bit disappointing for me. I got the table bonus from David Moyes in the first game week, but then I got a blank from Arteta in the third game week, so I didn't quite get as many points from that as well. I thought I was playing it safe, and then Arteta went and lost, which got 0 points, which was just really disappointing in the third week of that in game week 26. But overall, I didn't mind the assistant manager chip. Does it need to be 3 weeks? Probably not. I think it's a little bit probably overcomplicated having to find budget, then have it for 3 weeks, and then having to have transfers available for those 3 weeks. For me, it was probably a little bit too much for one chip. It also stopped other people later on from being able to use other chips later on in the season if they hadn't been quite as active or hadn't planned as well. So I like the concept of it, but if you just had it as a 1 week, and then you just brought in a manager for that 1 week and you got those points, I felt like that might be a slightly easier concept, rather than having to sort of manage transfers and everything else. My second wild card was good. Again, the challenge for me there was I started to hold off on players in and around managing free hits and everything else. So I didn't take hits before my wild card, because I was like, oh, there's no point because I'm going to be changing my team shortly. So just something for me to consider moving into next season is, make sure that you're on the best players, despite whether they've got blanks or lots coming up. If they've still got 3 or 4 game weeks, you can make up those -4s over a bigger period of time. My triple captain was 33 points. I know I got 11 points on here, but obviously got 22 points if I'd have just captained Isak anyway. It's an interesting one. I would love to have triple captained Salah when he was in such a great run of form, and obviously would have got more points if I'd have done it in game week 24 or 25. But obviously I had my assistant manager at the time, so therefore having to choose between the two was difficult. But obviously the assistant manager got me both of the doubles for that. So yeah, that was an okay result. 11 points is not a massive, but at least it was a double-digit haul. My bench boost did really, really well. So 30 points on my bench that week. That was a tougher one for me because with my bench boost, I wasn't, I had 2 double players on my bench, but I had 2 single players in my team. One of those, for example, being Salah. The interesting thing now is with the reduced number of double game weeks, do we need to save our bench boost for a double game week? Because realistically, at no point in this season would we have had 3 double game week players on the bench. Because there was never enough teams at any one time. The most teams that doubled in any one game week was 4. So even if you had triple of each of those, that's only 12 players. So your bench is still going to be single game week players. So do you just set your bench boost up in any single game week? I do think it also works well with playing it with your wild card. So maybe use it with your first wild card in the first half of the season. But it's certainly one that you don't need to necessarily hold for a double on that as well. Mine looks slightly inflated because I put 2 doublers on my bench. But I also think that they weren't potentially as strong as the 2 players that I had on the pitch. But yeah, overall, if it's going to be the same next season, the bench boost, there's no point waiting to a double because you're still only going to have single game week players on the bench. And then lastly, my free hit. And I had lots of thoughts running through my head with the free hit for this season. Do I play it in a double? Do I play it in a blank game week? Now, I played it in a blank game week this week, and it absolutely worked for me. 79 points in a blank game week was phenomenal. It massively gave me a big boost. Huge green arrow that week. This previous season, I used it in the blank, and it absolutely tanked for me. I brought in all the players that I thought would be good for that blank game week, and they all got nothing. I think got 28 points or something for the week. So the free hit is more about just hitting the right players on the right one. So you can use it in a double or in a blank. I used it in the blank this year, and it worked really well for me. So overall, I'm quite happy with my chip usage this year. Wildcard 1 obviously was the big game breaker for me in terms of my rank, moving off Salah and moving on to Haaland. when I should have kept Salah and brought Haaland in. So I should have done a full revamp of my team, and therefore moving off Haaland when his form dropped would have been a lot easier. And a smoother transition as well. So overall, this is how I use my chips, and I'm quite happy with that for this season. Okay, so we had a look at my game week 1 team. Now let's have a quick look at how I finished the season with game week 38. 47 points, down 71,000 places. Finished at 743,000th in the world, which is still within the top 10% of all players, but not where I wanted to be. So a little bit disappointing. 2.6 million in the bank. And I made a choice the day before the deadline to bring in Evan Nilsson. And then obviously watching a few deadline streams, I saw that Kevin De Bruyne was substituted, which is annoying because I could have brought in Semenyo, which I was thinking about for De Bruyne. And he got 13 points, would have made a huge difference. Obviously, Evan Nilsson only got 2 points on that as well. The other big mistake in the last one was I captained Saka, who of course has been out of form since he's come back from injury. Didn't captain Bowen, who's been the most informed player at the back end of the season. Bowen gets 13 points, Saka gets 1, comes off the bench as a substituted appearance. So for me, there's again another 12 points lost, and that makes a huge difference. You know, having nearly 20 points missed there by not waiting until the deadline to see team news. That 20 points would have certainly given me a green arrow instead of being 70,000 places down, probably 10 or 15,000 places up, and would have been around the 600k mark. So that would have been a much better result for me. Outside of that, clean sheets for Ruben Gvardiol, which was good. No clean sheet for Arsenal, which was a bit disappointing. And then outside of that, Mbeumo getting some points on the board again. So an average week overall to finish the season, but a little bit disappointing. I was trying to be a little bit differential. I was trying to chase to get up at least within the top 500k by the end of the season, and didn't quite make it. So overall, really, it was a good season. There were some real lows. Down at 5.3 million, I considered just quitting doing the videos. Because I'm like, who wants to listen to someone that's 5 millionth in the world? But it was nice to kind of document that journey and climb back up. And as I said, a big thank you to all of you for following, and those that have managed to get this far into the season still watching my videos. Lastly, let's thanks to FPL Optimized. The website is in the bottom corner of the screen here, but they gave me the ability to kind of see who got the most points on my team throughout the season. So for example, Pickford got me 57 points, Gabriel got me 114 points, Trent Alexander-Arnold 61 points, Hall 55 points, Salah 438 points. Now obviously this takes into consideration captain choices as well. 438 points from Salah is amazing. That's nearly 25% of my team's total came from one player, and I captained him 17 times. Now bearing in mind it's a 38 week season, to only captain him 17 times, given the fact that he was by far the best player in the league, just seems really low on that as well. So maybe something just to consider on that as well. Cole Palmer, captain 4 times, 133 points. Brian Mbeumo, 125 points. And then Saka, despite his 3 months layoff, captain 4 times, 115 points on that as well. Up front, Isak, 128 points. Chris Wood with 99 and Cunha with 91. And then on my bench, Flecken with 46. Rodgers with 76, Aina with 47, and then Gvardiol with 44. So for me, it was just quite interesting seeing where those players come from. Now, Gvardiol ended up being the highest scoring defender in the game, and yet he only got me 44 points. Why was I not on him for longer, especially given that Gabriel was injured for the back half of the season? Just some things to consider there about being on the right players at the right time. But this was how my team looked for players that have got me the most points over the season. And if you are interested in looking at that, there's some really cool tools on FPL Optimized that can show you all sorts of different stats and visualizations of how your team performed over the season. And finally, just a big thank you for watching FPL Fanzone. If you've got this far into the video, you must surely owe me a like by now. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and hit that notification bell for updates on pre-season, transfer news, and of course when the game gets launched again, setting up for game week 1 in 2025-26 season. Thanks again for watching FPL Fanzone, and as always, may all your arrows be green.